My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Following Starfall, Feyre, Rhysand, and their friends travel to Lord Devlin's Illyrian camp. Feyre trains her new powers in the isolated mountains near the camp, only to be discovered by Lucien and sentinels from Tamlin's court. When Feyre sends them away, she and Rhys connect over their shared desire to be near one another, even if it is disguised as just a bit of fun. Tension between the two grows in the aftermath of their late-night tryst, distracting Rhysand enough that he does not sense the attack that separates him from Feyre. Focused and deadly, Feyre locates Rhys and kills his attackers before hunting down the Suriel to cure Rhys of the poison in his veins. But Feyre learns more than she intends, and it is anger that consumes her at the knowledge that Rhys is her mate.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, self-harm, and depression will reoccur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's most beloved novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 45 through 51 in A Court of Mist and Fury.
We ask ourselves this week, who is more ready for their relationship, Feyre or Rhysand?
Themes we discuss in this section include honesty and intimacy. Before we venture into the Illyrian camp at the start of chapter 45, let's discuss the end of Starfall. Feyre informs us that, quote, "I'd danced with each of them, and when the night had shifted toward dawn and the music became soft and honeyed, I'd let Rhys take me in his arms and dance with me slowly. The next day, the inner circle wakes up and eats lunch before separating. This furthers my claim from last week that Starfall is similar to the summer solstice, when Feyre, Tamlin, and Lucien all gathered for lunch when they woke up."
I also want to note on Feyre's description of her dance with Rhys, quote, "I had let Rhys take me into his arms and dance with me." The way that Feyre words this, "let Rhys take me," it shows that she's surrendering herself to him, but she's finding power in doing so. This isn't a moment where Feyre gets pinned up against the wall and has intimacy forced upon her, like during Calamai and Tamlin, even though it was hot. This is on Feyre's terms. This is her making this moment her own. It's safe for her. Also, Rhysand gives her a brow kiss. He goes hard on the brow kisses in these chapters.
I think it just shows intimacy on his part.
It's amazing. I think that there's nothing hotter than a brow kiss. The best combination, brow kiss, chin lift. Chin lift, eye contact, brow kiss.
A gentle chin lift.
Oh, a gentle chin lift and a gentle brow kiss. Yeah. We're helping all of the husbands and boyfriends and partners who listen to this with their partner.
We're hoping you listen.
Please do.
Despite the magical night and several sweet moments with Rhys, Feyre is haunted by thoughts of Tamlin in the morning. Question. Why is Feyre hyperfixated on Tamlin? Would she have been so fixated if Rhys had slept with Feyre after Starfall?
Okay, so in order to have this discussion, I want to read a chunk of quote and break it up into two. Quote, traitor. Even if I'd left Tamlin, I was a traitor. I'd been gone for 2 months, just 2. Tamlin had given me so much, done so many kind things for me and my family. And here I was wanting another male, even as I hated Tamlin for what he'd done, how he'd failed me. Traitor. Feyre would have been obsessing over Tamlin way more if she had slept with Rhys. For as much as Tamlin has done her dirty, Feyre still hasn't severed that final piece with Tamlin, which will happen once Feyre discovers how Tamlin helped kill Rhys's mother and sister, because, that should be a great breakup thing of wow, I'm really over you. Murder.
I mean, if you're not over someone after you learn that, I think you're the problem.
I was about to say, God, you're shaving people, but no, you're not wrong. They're the problem. Also, it's only been 2 months since Feyre left Tamlin. And it's really crazy to me that it's only been 2 months. A lot of things have happened, right?
Right.
I always felt like it must have been 4 months. And it's normally something that I feel like authors tend to rush through. Initially, I used to have issues with this being only 2 months, especially since it's so much time. And I feel like SJM really could have added phrases like a month later or 2 weeks later. But the more I thought about it, the more I could see the other side. And while this would be something with other authors I might call lazy writing or speeding it up, I think it needs to be 2 months. I think that makes sense. First, it means that Feyre and Rhysand really are OTP because, they need to get together. They can't stay away from each other, so they have to get together. It also makes for a more interesting story because there wouldn't be a story if Feyre wasn't fighting to figure out her feelings. If this whole thing had taken place 8 months later and Feyre naturally got over Tamlin and then got together with Rhys, it wouldn't make sense because they're mates. She's being drawn to him and she's struggling with that. And this tension has to make sense. And it does.
I think so too. And I think that it replicates tensions that we feel in our own lives, right? Where our rational mind and what we think might be irrational are warring with each other. You put a time frame on your healing process and the rest of you is nope, I'm ready to heal. I'm done.
Yeah, it is crazy where sometimes it's a light switch and it changes.
I think the 2 months that have taken place and how quick it's been also speaks to how much was already being undone in the 3 months between books. So there's 3 months between the end of Thorns and Roses and Mist and Fury. And the fact that it may feel fast now means there was so much undoing of Feyre and her relationship with Tamlin before we even get on screen, so to speak.
Yeah, and I can see how a lot of people had issues with that initially. Of where did this come from? Why are we getting from point A to point G? But that's what we've been doing is analyzing it, where it's no, they had broken down quite a bit afterwards. There's a lot to infer here, but the timeline, I'm sticking to it. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So every time Feyre thinks to herself, traitor, I don't think she's just saying that to herself because she's turned her back on Tamlin and she's gotten over him so quickly. I actually think every time she says traitor, she's calling herself a traitor because she's being a traitor to her own heart and emotions and self-control.
That's a great point because it doesn't read that way, but I think you're right.
Because especially as we go on further, she starts to say, I'm surprised how much I don't feel bad.
She feels guilty for not feeling guilty.
Yeah. So I think when you go back and you read this with that in mind, you're she calls herself traitor. It's oh, she's not saying traitor to Tamlin. She's saying damn it, heart, pull it together.
Right.
Additionally, Feyre still has to recognize that Tamlin did help her family. But for the first time, we're seeing Feyre think about Tamlin both in the way that he helped her as well as the way that he failed her, all within the same few lines.
Which I think demonstrates growth on her part, that she's not separating the two anymore, that she can think of them both together in the same context.
Yeah, and I think for any kind of healing, you always have to think about it. There's duality of selves, there's duality of situations where you can have something really great, but also really shitty.
Yep.
We leave the happy, warm feelings back at Starfall in chapter 45 and start the Illyrian war camp with a cold new reality. Quote, the Illyrian war camp deep in the northern mountains was freezing. Apparently, spring was little more than a whisper in the region. Feyre and her surroundings were beginning to warm up back in Velaris, with spring ushering in new beginnings for her life, being away from Tamlin. Now we're in this new section of the book, and Feyre still can't quite get away from winter, which is accurate since this is when she has a run-in with Lucien and can't get away from Tamlin.
When Feyre arrives at the Illyrian training camp with Rhys, Cassian, and more, she observes that, quote, racks of weapons were left out to the elements. This feels like a metaphor for the Illyrians themselves, especially Cassian and Azriel, or maybe even a metaphor for Feyre in the Spring Court. This is when the group meets Lord Devlin, and Feyre observes how the Illyrians treat their High Lord and Cassian. At one point, Rhys threatens Lord Devlin, saying, quote, "She, Feyre, is mine, and if any of you lay a hand on her, you lose that hand, and then you lose your head. And once Feyre's done killing you, then I'll grind your bones to dust." First of all, this is probably my favorite Rhysand moment. Why? Because he's giving Feyre the power here. He doesn't feel a need to exert his power, but establishes Feyre's instead.
I love this moment so much. And remember how I said that Feyre surrendering her power to Rhys by letting him dance with her, that empowered her as well, right? Well, the same thing here. Rhys surrendered power and ownership to Feyre, giving them both strength now.
And I think that just speaks to how powerful they can be together as a couple.
I don't know if I'm skipping. No, I'm skipping ahead. Now I'm going to answer it. We'll figure it out. Dare I say, I think Rhys might be farther along in emotional development.
Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah, I just want to that's the question we're going to answer. Or that's the answer. That's the answer. There we go.
That's your answer.
That's my answer. But this is, I think the reason why I want to put a pin on that is just because, keep that in mind, folks, as we go through.
Okay. Feyre laughs at Rhys's comment and, quote, "gave them all a small smile anyway, one I'd seen Amren make 100 times. I love that powerful Feyre emulates other powerful women.
Mm-hmm.
And she owns it.
I also want to note that Feyre chooses to emulate Amren, even though just within the page before, Mor had the same threatening smile. But Feyre chooses to channel Amren. This continues my theory that Feyre does not respect Mor. All of this aside, I really love SJM's use of the female smile. The female smile is a powerful force in this book. Feyre doesn't smile to anyone until Tarquin and then eventually Rhys. Ianthe uses her smile to tempt, Amren and Mor use their smile to threaten, and Mor uses her smile to hide behind. And I just think about all the times in our world, and I wonder if this happens in Prythian, I'm sure, that men tell women to smile more. And it's just seeing all these types of smiles, it's kind of like, yeah, go ahead, tell us to keep smiling, because we're going to power smile at you.
Instead of power posing, it's power smiling.
That's what we got to work on. Power smile. Just aggressively smile. Oh, you want me to smile more? This reminds me of an old job that I worked at. And there was one coworker and he used to tell me all the time, you should smile more. You should smile more. So one day I printed up a bunch of articles about why that was sexist and why you shouldn't do that and how shitty it is. And then I waited for him to tell me to smile more and I dropped it off at his desk.
Nice. That's a power move.
You know what, though? He took it and he apologized.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That is growth. One breadcrumb I think worth mentioning here has to do with Rhys's explanation of the blood right to Feyre. Between learning about the blood right here in this chapter, learning that Devlin allows females to train, and Rhys's story about when he, Azriel, and Cassian had to fight their way to find each other during the rite, does a lot of work to set up what is going to happen in Silver Flames, and we don't even know that that's happening.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It went right over my head the first time and second time. Really, you don't think about it. And then there's this other quote. Cassian has been trying to build up an aerial fighting unit amongst the females. And even though it's not aerial, but Cassian does help build up a female fighter group.
Yeah. Nesta and Emery and Gwen.
I know, right? It's just they really set it up. It's great. I love it.
When Feyre and Rhysand go into the forest to start training, Rhys antagonizes Feyre by saying, quote, "Show me something impressive and I'll tell you. Magic for answers." Jac has spoken before about how truth is like a currency. Unlike Feyre's earlier time at the Night Court when she and Rhys traded truth for truth, Feyre is more willing to engage in this exchange and is better equipped to this time around. Her powers are truth in and of itself, a truth that she's been denied. In acknowledging her own power as truth, Feyre unlocks something even deeper within herself and her powers.
All of this is what gives Feyre the strength to see the final truth about Tamlin and to discover what really happened between him and Rhys's family.
So far, Feyre has been really hard on herself for being a traitor, as we've discussed. How convenient, then, that Rhys tells Feyre the story about his mother and sister being slaughtered by Tamlin and his family. Quote, "He'd murdered Rhysand's family. The High Lord I'd loved. He'd murdered his friend's family. The people Rhys, had loved most. Gone. Slaughtered in cold blood. slaughtered by Tamlin. Question. Does Rhys pick this story at this time on purpose to sever the ties between Feyre and Tamlin? Or is he actually just being vulnerable?
Big bold letters. Discuss.
Discuss.
Look, there comes a time in every podcaster's life where they say something that they can't believe they're saying. And I'm shocked too, but I think I'm going to defend Rhys here.
Wow.
I know. Don't worry. Like, we'll go back to normal eventually. I don't know. This episode, I'm kind of like a Rhys sympathizer. There's no way Rhys and Feyre could be together without Feyre knowing the truth. And more importantly, there's no way Feyre can't know the truth about Tamlin, the man she loved. That's not something you get to hide from someone forever. She deserves to know the man she thought she was going to marry, what he's really like. Even if she's broken up with him, like that's something you have to find out. It's a whole messed up situation where the Spring Court is at fault first. That doesn't mean that Rhysand and his father are completely innocent, but what I appreciate about this is that Rhys doesn't apologize for killing Tamlin's brothers and dad. Although it all comes from Rhys's point of view, so of course it's going to be a little bit more sympathetic towards him, but he doesn't cower from his kills. What makes Feyre angry is realizing that Tamlin made himself look like the victim. And when Feyre finds out about Tamlin and his brothers killing Rhys's mom and sister, and Rhys asks her to try something different with her power, quote, each one of my animals halted mid-air and froze into perfect carved bits of ice. One by one, they dropped to the earth and shattered. Come on, SJM, that is amazing. Like, this is a perfect visual representation of Feyre's old emotions, literally freezing up in shock of what Tamlin did, and then falling to the earth and shattering, just like her own beliefs and trust in Tamlin. What do we call that?
Chef's kiss.
We call that a chef's kiss, exactly. Mwah. Additional props we have to give to SJM. We spent the first chunk of this book trying to show how Tamlin and Rhys are the same, but they end up taking two different paths. In Rhys's retelling of what happened to his mom and sister, he admits to taking Tamlin under his wing, befriending him, and even teaching him how to fight like an Illyrian. But when Rhys tells the story of how Tamlin and he killed each other's fathers, quote, I felt the power shift to me even as I saw it shift to him, and we just looked at each other as we were both suddenly crowned High Lord, and then I ran. SJM is showing the reader that the two characters were always going to be linked, always similar, even becoming High Lord at the same time. And it just makes me think of some of the TikToks I see of like the hardcore Tamlin apologists and how they argue that like, well, Rhys and Tamlin are very similar. They were both flawed. And I'm just like, yeah, SJM didn't hide that. Like she literally writes it out. Like it's not a surprise that they're supposed to be the same.
Right. And I think that on the flip side, the Rhys diehards are like, well, they're so different. And no, they're the same.
They take different paths
eventually. Take different paths, right. But I think that was the whole point. If I had to boil this entire series down, it's about a girl falling in love with two identical men who make different choices.
Exactly. Like completely. I think you're 100% spot on. And it's more than just choices on how they treat Feyre. It's like choices on how they treat responsibility.
Right. And how they choose to use their power.
Yeah. And live their life. And, what kind of High Lord do they want to be? What kind of man? What kind of partner? There's a lot there, but it just always cracks me up where, you have like the two camps. They're like, they're nothing alike. And then the other camp, well, they're identical. And it's like, I mean, we have it right here, folks.
SJM wasn't hiding it.
There's no secret.
We see a continuation of Feyre's emulation of a powerful female. As she uses her powers more and unlocks her powers further, Feyre observes that, quote, embers flared around us, floating in the air, and I sent out a breath of soothing dark, a breath of ice and water, as if it were a wind at dawn, sweeping clean the world. The power did not belong to the High Lords, not any longer. It belonged to me, as I belonged only to me, as my future was mine to decide, to forge.
Feyre finally owns her powers given to her by 7 men, now owned by 1 woman and, frankly, made better. But this could only be done once she releases Tamlin and faces the truth about who he is.
This is a transformative moment for Feyre. This is the culmination of so much work she's done to unlock these powers. It sets her up to be as powerful as she is during the battle for Velaris, a far cry from the Feyre who could not control and did not want to use her powers at the start of the book. What Sarah J. Maas has done so well is establish each of these powers at various points in the novel, so that it becomes believable that Feyre is able to find ways to take these powers and make something new with them, given that she's used them before. As a writer, this is such an important progression for this moment and Feyre's powers during the battle for Velaris to become believable. During the training sequence, Feyre sees Rhys and thinks, quote, "There, in that hole in my chest, I saw the image there. At first interpretation, he'd look terrifying, vengeance and wrath incarnate. But if you came closer, the painting would show the beauty on his face, the wings flared out not to hurt, but to carry me from danger, to shield me. The painting, I could see it, feel it. I wanted to paint it. I wanted to paint. I want to paint you." First off, always have to point out that Rhys continues to embody contrast, just like Feyre always has. But we also see this intense escalation from Starfall to this moment, specifically around Feyre's desire to paint. She painted on Rhys during Starfall, and that was the first time she'd painted in her new Fey life, which, by the way, is like at the 2/3 point of this book. It's a long time for her to have not painted.
Yeah.
But now she not only wants to paint, she wants to paint Rhys, and she expresses that to him. This feels extremely intimate on Feyre's part.
Oh, yeah. I would laugh if someone asked to paint me. It's very hard to take it seriously. But, it's a very vulnerable moment. And it shows that Feyre is almost surprised that she feels it because, that quote where she was saying, like, I feel it. I wonder if she's almost surprised that she feels emotions. Like, she just thinks that it's so guttural, those feelings, that it's more than just the feeling of painting. It's feelings.
It is. I do agree she's shocked at having feelings, and I'm going to mention this again later in the episode, but I think she's shocked that she has a heart and she's capable of feeling.
Yep, and it starts here.
Well, I think it started during Starfall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it started way earlier, but Feyre, takes a little bit to catch up with her own body.
Yeah, she's not always cognizant of what's happening to her.
No.
In some ways, in this moment, painting has gone from being representative of the feminine, which we discussed in Thorns and Roses, and has now become a signal for intimacy. It's an emotional vulnerability that Feyre has not been capable of up until now.
We enter chapter 46 with, quote, "Did spring ever come to this blasted place? We are getting more frustration from Feyre for the lack of change. She's really starting to embrace spring and she wants to move on, but there's something that's not letting her yet. Tamlin."
He doesn't deserve this much energy.
He really doesn't, but he's inflicted so much trauma that she needs to go through it.
I also think she's an extremely loyal individual. And I think it's more her loyalty that keeps her back than it is the individual themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, she's a loyal person, and then, you just can't argue the fact that he did help her and her family.
Right, exactly. And she's loyal to those good things.
Yeah.
At the start of this chapter, we find our group in Rhys's mother's house at the Illyrian camp. As Feyre and Rhys go up the stairs to go to bed, Feyre thinks, quote, "In this small space, the scent of him washed over me, beckoned to me." When I read this, I wondered, is this the mating bond? I think this a lot during this section about how much of what Feyre is experiencing is her desire, or is it the mating bond, and to what extent is her ability to choose kind of removed?
Well, that's a good question.
I ask this question a lot because a lot of the fanfic I read is about alphas and omegas and mating bonds, and there is always a question of consent because when your biology is forcing you to be attracted to someone, are you actually capable of making a choice and consenting to what happens?
It's a good question, and here's the one answer: Elaine and Lucien.
Fair.
Oh, we spoiled that. Sorry if you guys hadn't. Sorry, but
spoiler.
Yeah, Elaine and Lucien. That's the epitome of she's not attracted to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's hard to resist, but the whole buildup shows that there's always been more of an attraction there. I would say yes if it wasn't for the fact that we have Elaine and Lucien. And that's why I think you and I both agree that they'll never be together. Doesn't mean she'll end up with Azriel.
Right, but I don't think that she will be with Lucien.
Yeah.
Spoiler for ACOTAR.
I know. Post-spoiler warning.
A fun little moment I do want to point out in this scene, there's moonlight present on the landing with Feyre and Rhys when she thinks about kissing him. That good old moonlight always present during intimate moments or moments of lust ever since Thorns and Roses.
Moonlight is also there during moments of truth. Feyre has discovered some pretty big truths under moonlight. Think about after the hewn city and Feyre realizes that she's attracted to Rhys. She was in the garden under the moonlight. Now in this moonlight, she's discovered some other deep truths about her and Rhys. Quote, "Because things between us had never been normal, not after the very first moment we'd met in Calamai. I'd been unable to easily walk away from him then, when I thought he was deadly and dangerous.
Despite knowing the truth about Tamlin, Feyre continues to think of herself as a traitor when she spends time thinking about her attraction to Rhys. Is this perhaps her human instinct fighting the mating bond? I think maybe, to some extent. In chapter 45, Feyre had a moment after her arrival to the Illyrian camp where she thought, quote, "But all I heard were those two words he'd said, echoing against the steady beat of traitor, traitor. She's mine." To combat her attraction to Rhys and her desire to be with him, Feyre decides, quote, "fun and distraction." It didn't need to be complicated. Keeping things purely physical, well, it didn't feel like as much of a betrayal.
Feyre's having to justify her own feelings, and it's a lot easier if you think it's just attraction, and a whole lot harder once you realize there's emotions there as well.
And I think that just, again, speaks to the fact that Feyre doesn't think she has a heart.
It's just the most, like, get over yourself. Like, like, she admits that she has feelings for him, but refuses to admit it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant writing from SJM, because even the way that she talks, like Feyre talks to herself in these moments, it's kind of like even she's like, we all know the truth, but she won't say it.
Yeah.
But she kind of has this flippant attitude of like, well, we know,
I know. Fortunately or unfortunately for Feyre, quote, "I could feel Rhys's stare devouring me. Flashes of hunger so insatiable that it was an effort to focus on the task ahead." Rhys sends sensations to Feyre's body and her nether regions. Is this an issue of consent? I know I keep asking these questions, but it keeps coming up for me. Or is this just a side effect of the mating bond?
I just like that you say nether regions.
What am I supposed to say? Private parts? Her lady bits?
Her genitalia? Her core.
Her core.
I feel like these emotions are too strong from Rhys's part, that they can't help but be sent down. In a few chapters, Rhys hears Feyre's thoughts when she starts to think that she's useless, and he says that he can't help hear something when it's being thrown down the bond. I think that this is him trying to hold back, and yet it's still coming through. The fact that he didn't send over a full sex dream kind of shows that to me.
That's fair. You're going to make an argument later, and I want to mention it here, and then we'll discuss it later. But
do I know what argument?
Yes.
Okay.
So you make an argument later that the things that Feyre thinks, how much of it is actually resending them down the bond.
Yeah.
And I wonder to what extent every time she's thinking traitor, traitor, it's actually Rhys sending down the bond.
Shut up.
She's mine.
Shut up. Are you saying that maybe Rhys is the one who's setting traitor, traitor down the bond?
No, I'm saying the opposite. I think every time Feyre thinks traitor, traitor, because she says, "But all I heard were those two words he'd said, echoing against the steady beat of traitor, traitor." It's him saying she's mine down the bond constantly.
Yeah.
She's mine, she's mine, she's mine.
Oh, I like that a lot.
I like that. I'm finding it hilarious that you're like, wait, you think Rhys is saying traitor, traitor?
No. Now I'm like, I think I want to fight this one. I think it could be Rhys agreeing with his own sentiment of being a traitor. You got me thinking. There's a lot in these chapters where there's a lot of accidental bond message slipping through.
That's how we're inferring it, right?
That's like, it's not guaranteed. This is exactly how we're.
Right. I've always inferred that it was Feyre in her own head. But then we're going to discuss later how it might actually be Rhys sending messages down the bond involuntarily.
Yeah. But with that in mind, Feyre thinks traitor, traitor a lot in these chapters. So I'm wondering let's see if we can make a case here why Rhys would consider himself a traitor. Maybe he's considering himself a traitor because here we go. Later on, Rhys admits that he struggles with how much to tell Feyre, how much to let her come to her own conclusion, because Rhys does not make first moves on her. He lets her do the first moves all the time. So every time, I'm wondering if we go back and think about the times that she says, traitor, traitor, did Rhys let something slip?
I wonder if he feels guilty for keeping back the secret of the mating bond. And even though he's letting her make the first moves, still feeling like he's betraying her trust or that he's taking advantage of her.
Yep. I think that he could also be considering himself a traitor to what he probably told himself. Like, you know what? I'm not going to interfere. She's going to make her own choice. But then he does things like call her mine. He gets protective. He kisses her brows. Like, it's really hard to, like, follow his own rules and not be a traitor to his own rules.
Yeah.
Shit. It's a great... I can't wait till we call out the other time later, guys. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So I can't forget to acknowledge the fact that Lucien shows up at the end of chapter 46. We got really excited about the part before he shows up, but he actually does show up. Chapter 47 continues with Feyre's encounter with Lucien. Lucien tells Feyre that, quote, "We've been hunting for you for over 2 months. Hunting for me? As if I were indeed prey." This is a callback to so many instances of Feyre being treated like prey in Thorns and Roses. More than that, it speaks to Lucien's limited understanding of Feyre, the fact that he can't see her for the predator that she's become. This must really set Feyre off, and honestly, it would for me too. Because when Lucien talks to Feyre, quote, like he'd been soothing a wild animal, behind him the 4 sentinels closed in, hurting me, the High Lord's pet in possession. Feyre thinks, I was not the High Lord's pet any longer, and maybe the world should learn that I did indeed have fangs. The lesson here is please stop treating women like animals, but also stop comparing yourself one to Feyre, because otherwise you're going to get treated like an animal. And this is where you're going to glimpse my stream of consciousness as I was writing these notes. Because wait, I just had a thought. You want to know why Feyre compares everyone, including herself, to animals? Because she spent so much time in her adolescence, when her brain was developing, hunting for animals.
Yes.
And don't forget, she and her sisters called herself a half-wild beast.
Because that's what she was. Like, that's what she grew up with.
Yeah, that was her persona. So, of course, she's going to compare everyone to animals, including herself. And I'm sorry for ragging on you, Feyre.
Yeah, that's our bad. Maybe you should have...
Tried harder.
Or, Feyre, maybe... I don't know. We're going to somehow still blame her for this. Feyre, maybe you should have made the link for us earlier.
Right? Or maybe, Feyre, you should have assimilated better so you stopped being an animal.
Yeah. Except she went from being an animal. I mean, that's part of the reason why her and Tamlin got along is because she was a half-wild animal.
It's true.
And so was Tamlin. He was a physical beast when she met him.
But we've grown past that point in her life.
Yeah, now she's not a half-wild animal. Now she's Talontoes. Like with Rhys.
His
nasty-ass Talontoes.
They always keep coming back.
They always keep... If there's anything that SJM did not need to include in that description...
was the
Talontoes. Like, do his shoes disappear when that happens? Do they pierce through the shoes? Does he have to fix the shoes every time that the Talontoes, like, slice through?
Yeah, I don't know.
Are the shoes big enough for the Talontoes? Did the whole toes turn into a talon and they don't grow because it's the same size? Are they sharp?
I think we need to move on from the Talontoes.
Can you paint them? Feyre isn't the only one who's changed. Lucien himself is pretty different as well. Quote, his red hair tied back. There wasn't a hint of finery on him, just armored leather, swords, knives. His metal eye roamed over me, his golden skin pale. We all know Lucien to be a tan, flashy, pretty boy. And right now, he has lost all of his glitz and glam, and he's looking pretty pale, and just all around rough. I don't think Feyre soaks that in enough, but I don't blame her, obviously. Like, she's about to be kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend's best friend, and I wouldn't notice that either. But, you know, we're not her, we're readers, we can take this in. It's hard to pay attention to Lucien when Lucien himself is in all sorts of denial. He says, quote, I made a mistake. We all made mistakes. He's sorry, more than you realize. So am I. And the reason why I emphasized all is because it was italicized, so I just wanted to, I wasn't being dramatic, which I normally am. I really want to talk about this all. He's not talking about just himself or just Tamlin. Otherwise, he would have said, we made mistakes. Instead, he said, we all made mistakes. So is Lucien implying that he, Tamlin, and Feyre made mistakes? And if that's the case, then what mistakes did Feyre make, and why are we blaming her here? Lucien then goes on to tell Feyre that I need you home. Now, this isn't because he cares about her, it's because he cares about not getting in trouble with Tamlin.
Or, I always inferred him to say, and what I infer him to say when he says we all make mistakes, is that he's worried about Tamlin's association with Hybern, and he's blaming Feyre for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But Lucien's still blaming Feyre.
Of course.
Tamlin decided to go partner with the enemy, and that's on you, Feyre.
Yeah, exactly.
Lucien is a douchebag, and we need to stop feeling like he's a special character.
He doesn't deserve happiness.
I've just attacked so many people, so many listeners. But, like, show me one time he's done something good. Like, even in the first book.
No, he didn't.
Can we think of anything?
No.
No. He did nothing for Feyre for her. It was for Tamlin.
It was always for Tamlin.
That's why he was late to things.
Right. And he fixed her face after the adder beat her for Tamlin.
For Tamlin. He says it's for Tamlin.
Yeah.
We're not making it up. This is why he doesn't get to have Elaine. He hasn't earned her or deserved her at all. This is why she isn't attracted to him, because he's a little bitch boy. All right, let's keep going. Every argument Lucien has for Feyre to go back to Tamlin is not because Tamlin loves Feyre. It's not because he and Tamlin care for Feyre, but because things are bad and they need Feyre to come in and fix it. Because the responsibility is back on her, back on the woman, and fuck them.
You know what this teaches me? Men only know how to mess things up, not fix things.
Yeah. Yes. It completely. Look at the world. It's broken.
It's true.
It's broken.
Lucien's inability to really understand or see Feyre is exasperated when he tries to tell Feyre he'll take her home, to which she does not respond favorably. Quote, "That stopped being my home the day you let him lock me up inside it." In my personal opinion, Lucien is trying to use what he knows of Feyre against her longing for a home, a place to feel safe. What he doesn't realize is that she's grown. As Feyre starts to think about how to escape from Lucien, she recalls her training with Cassian. Quote, "As if all the lessons he'd been drilling into me each morning were a net that caught me as I free fell into my rising panic." We spoke last week about how Rhys has been training Feyre against her instincts of fear when she free falls. We can see here that Cassian has as well. What I love about this is that it's also a very subtle foreshadowing of Feyre's free fall when Rhys is shot, which we discussed this episode. She also catches herself from that free fall with a net.
Think back to Thorns and Roses and how Feyre keeps calling Tamlin a warrior, and we just keep pointing out that he really wasn't. Quote, "I never realized that while Lucien had been trained as a warrior, Cassian, Azriel, Mor, and Rhys were warriors." This is the moment when Feyre realizes that she's surrounded by kids playing dress-up.
And you know what? For a while, Feyre was one of them, playing dress-up. It was true for her, too, because playing dress-up felt safe compared to where she had come from. Think about Summer Solstice. She was compared to being childlike. She was positively fey. She wasn't really fey. I love this idea that they were just children playing pretend, because that's exactly what all of them were doing.
It's true. I mean, if you think about it, too, Tamlin and Lucien are both younger compared to this other crowd. And Tamlin, was absolutely playing dress up as High Lord because he doesn't want to. Mm-hmm. Lucien's playing dress up as a spring court emissary because he's actually an autumn court. Mm-hmm. And Feyre's going in playing dress up pretending to be Fae. Like, everyone's just like not who they are in the spring court.
Right. And they were all pretending things were fine. Mm-hmm. And for all of them in all aspects of their life, things were not fine.
Children.
You know who's not a child? Rhys.
I was like, Daddy Azzy?
Also, Daddy Azzy.
We don't get any Daddy Azzy in this.
No, we don't. But that's okay.
I'll thirst later.
So Rhys enters the scene and puts everyone to shame. Feyre observes that, quote, "the unruffled, fine clothes, another weapon, to hide just how skilled and powerful he was, to hide where he came from and what he loved, a weapon worth the cost of the magic he'd used to hide it, even if it put us at risk of being tracked." I think it says a lot about Feyre's growth in this book so far that she observes clothing not as superficial and more than just a uniform. She's learned that clothing can be used as a weapon. And who did she learn that from? Rhysand.
Clothes have always been a sign or signal to us for where Feyre is at. It shows her safety, her comfort. It's either a uniform or a mask. And what we're seeing here is that clothing can be a weapon. The fact that Rhys is so put together while Lucien is out of place is meant to be unsettling. And then if you think about the fact that, like, Lucien's the one who's dressed up for the forest and Rhys is just, like, walking around in a nice fancy clothes in the middle of the forest is also really unsettling, too. Mm-hmm. And yet he manages to make Lucien feel out of place. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Feyre starts to really understand what happened at the spring court. Quote, "I'm not a child playing games. That's how they seen me. In need of coddling, explaining, defending." We didn't explore this, but let's do this now. Feyre is an infant compared to everyone else. Rhys is 500 years old. Tamlin's a little younger than that. But Feyre really is a child. And even though she grew up fast, she doesn't have the years of life experience like those around her. And Rhys does not use that against her, and he doesn't treat it like a weakness. Tamlin and Lucien and Ianthe all did. Speaking of Ianthe, Lucien says, quote, "Things got bad. Ianthe got out of hand." Okay, so it's like Lucien just went from blaming Feyre to blaming the other woman, right?
Right. No, absolutely.
It's like, oh no, we can't blame you, Feyre. Okay, fine. Who's another woman who was in the court? Alice. Let's blame her next. Ianthe got out of hand? Like, whose problem is that? Not only is this telling me that Lucien doesn't get it, but he's happy to blame the women as part of the reason things got out of hand. Who's in charge of Ianthe? Tamlin. She's only ever gotten as bad as Tamlin allows her to get. Feyre says, quote, "You gave up on me. You were my friend, and you picked him, picked obeying him, even when you saw what his orders and his rules did to me, even when you saw me wasting away day by day. You saw what was happening to me. You were too afraid of him to truly do anything about it." I want to go back to a point we made at the beginning of the season. TikTok says that Lucien's changed, but really his circumstances did. Those circumstances being Tamlin and how powerful he is. Now that Tamlin is back at full strength, Lucien had to work around him, which meant failing Feyre.
I think it also meant what we're seeing here, blaming the women, because Lucien is too afraid to blame Tamlin.
I can't blame my friend, so I have to attack this entire gender.
But that's exactly, but that's what he's doing,
It
right?
is, but it's just like, it's so douchey. Why doesn't he blame Bronn and Hart?
They're pretty useless.
How come he can't say, look, I failed you, but you know what? Who also failed you? These two assholes.
It's true.
They could have done better. They could have backed me up with Tamlin. And Bronn and Hart are standing in the background like, dude, what the hell? We helped you get here. Now we have to walk all the way back to the spring court together, and it's going to be really awkward.
There's a point during their exchange that Lucien mocks Feyre for thinking the night court is better than the spring court. Feyre thinks, quote, "I remembered what I was supposed to know, to have experienced, what Lucien and the others could never know, not even if it meant forfeiting my own life. And I would, to keep Velaris safe, to keep Mor and Amren and Cassian and Azriel and Rhys safe." We started to see this sentiment in Feyre last week, and honestly, it's been developing in her for a long time. I think Feyre's devotion to Velaris is solidified here, and it's what makes her fight so hard for Velaris later, and it's doubly fueled by her bond with Rhys. From there, Feyre says to Lucien, quote, "When you spend so long trapped in darkness, Lucien, you find that darkness begins to stare back, a pulse of surprise, of wicked delight against my mental shields, at the dark, membranous wings I knew were now poking over my shoulders. The human girl you knew died under the mountain. I have no interest in spending immortality as a High Lord's pet." It's ironic because Feyre's becoming a creature, and she kind of comes across as Rhys's pet here.
I know, right?
It's a little ironic.
I'm not a High Lord's pet. Daddy, take me home now.
Tell me I'm a good girl. What Feyre's doing, though, is she's emulating Rhys for obvious reasons. She's growing the wings to scare off Lucien, but she's also using truth to lie or mislead him. Before now, Feyre's only had her hands turn into claws or talons, but now she's growing full-on wings. Is this possibly a stretch for her?
I don't think it's a stretch, mainly because of all the other powers that Feyre's had to get a grasp on. So I don't think it's crazy to believe that she already has an understanding. But here's my additional thoughts. Feyre recently learned the truth of how Rhys's family died, and Rhys tells Feyre that he's surprised that she didn't see his mother and sister's wings strung up in the manor. So it makes sense that in order to protect Rhys from the spring court, Feyre would grow the thing that the spring court had stolen away from him.
My heart.
Right? Like, it's like,
It's okay, Rhys. I'll be your mother and sister's wings for you.
Yeah. The thing that represented something that was taken away in weakness and, pain now becomes a representation of protection.
It makes sense why they conceive their child when they both have wings.
Right? Yeah. Quote, shape-shifting, a gift from Tamlin that I had not wanted or needed until now. And it's crazy that that's the gift that she uses to then protect Rhys and will eventually bring her closer to Rhys. Funny that you mentioned the baby because this is a spoiler for Silver Flames, but the gift that Tamlin has given Feyre is the gift that sets her up to not just have the baby with wings, but to also set her life up in danger. because she shapeshifts as an Illyrian, conceives, shapeshifts back out of the Illyrian form, and her life is at risk there.
Tamlin, the gift that keeps on killing.
You're not wrong. It's true. It's true. That's the most Tamlin situation. Like, he gives her a gift, the ability to conceive with Rhys, to have the Illyrian baby they both want. But you're gonna die. Like, it always comes with some kind of string attached.
And death is always involved.
It really is. The gift that keeps on killing. Tamlin.
Side note, as Feyre watches Lucien react, Feyre is, quote, unyielding and cold and dark. The creature I might one day have become if I stayed at the Spring Court, if I had remained broken for decades, centuries, until I learned to quietly direct those shards of pain outward, learn to savor the pain of others. I just want to remind us all that we talked about what would have happened if Mor never went to help Feyre get out of Tamlin's manor. At that time, I talked about how if Feyre had stayed in the manor, it would have been her villain origin story. And I just want to say that I think SJM agrees with me, and I would really love to see this alternate universe.
Oh my god. Spoiler for SJM World. Now that that's been done, I would love the multiverse to include parallel universe.
Oh, that would be cool.
How great would that be?
That would be really cool.
I think it'd get messy and complicated.
It would get extremely messy.
But then, like, Elaine and Gwen could both end up with an Azriel.
Truth. Maybe in the parallel universe, Azriel's with both of them.
Maybe one of them gets a 3-way with both Azriels.
Oh.
He's not even in these chapters, and we will bring it back.
Always. I do want to note at the end of this quote that Feyre says, I might have learned to savor the pain of others. Oh, she's going to do that.
Yeah, I might have. Give it, let me look at my watch. Oh, right, like 24 hours?
Yeah. You'll get there.
You'll get there. You don't worry. After Lucien leaves and Rhysand checks in on Feyre, she says, quote, the fact that it was so easy that I felt so little upsets me more than the encounter itself. Perhaps that had been my problem all along, why I hadn't taken that final step at Starfall. I was guilty that I didn't feel awful, not truly, not for wanting him. Now that Feyre's confronted Tamlin, or rather his people, Feyre's willing to admit that what she feels for Rhys is more than just physical, that there are some actual feelings involved too, and that she doesn't feel awful for having them. And then you know what we get? Another brow kiss.
Let's get it on.
We all know a brow kiss is the gateway kiss to sex.
Man, I need to do more of that in my life. Then.
I mean, like, try it, right? Everyone, all listeners, hear ye. Just chin lift. Gaze in the eyes, gentle brow kiss, gaze in the eyes, tuck behind the hair, tuck behind the ear. You just gaze, just hold that gaze.
I will test and report back.
Let me know.
I will.
And then if they look away first, kiss the neck.
Oh, 100.
We're coaching everyone on how to have sex here.
Feyre and Rhys make it to the inn at the start of chapter 48. And oh, baby, have I been waiting for us to get to this point.
Finally. I love the points that we're most excited for, like this, and then underneath the court. It's like, wait a minute. Is it because of sex?
Sex.
Rereading this inn scene, I forget it is quite hot.
Oh, it's so hot.
Especially since, like, we had to analyze it, and there was a lot of rereads, because when you're analyzing literature, you really have to, like, absorb the words. I don't know how to describe it, right? Like, you're really trying to, like, imagine it, capture it, look at it at different angles. So, like, doing the literary analysis of this inn scene was a treat.
It was.
It was a delight.
Because you're also trying to be like, okay, I'm reacting to this. Why am I reacting to this? So you keep reading and you keep analyzing and you keep reacting. When Feyre and Rhys make it up to their quote-unquote motel room in the attic, and they realize they're going to have to share a bed, Rhys tells Feyre, quote, I'll try to keep my hands to myself.
And Selena Gomez says, can't keep my hands to myself. And as Ariana Grande says, yeah.
Feyre uses food, or in this case hunger, as a means of power to control the situation. She tells Rhys she's hungry, to which Rhys immediately responds, quote, I'll go down and get us food while you change. What I love here, and what we're going to keep seeing the rest of these sections, is that Feyre's going to take charge and flaunt her power.
I mean, this is the power that all women really need to have. Go down and feed me, and then come back and service me.
Sounds like the right life for me.
This is the right life.
It's all I keep trying to do in my relationship.
But yeah, it's like, go feed me, come back, take care of me.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah. You can always count on Sarah J. Maas to set the mood with her environmental descriptions. Quote, "The rain tinkled on the roof mere inches away, a steady beat to the thoughts that now pulsed in my head."
Beats, pulsing.
Whew. You can always count on the beats and the pulsing.
Yeah. This whole chapter is hot. And I have to say that SJM, since Calamai, has been great at doing that with just these descriptions of like the rain was beating, pulsing, things get steamy. Like it just all around the stew steams and kisses her face. Like SJM is so good at setting the mood without you even realizing that she's setting the mood. When Feyre looks at Rhys, she imagines painting him and he says, "I love it when you look at me like that." The purr in his voice heated my blood. Like what? Like my power isn't something to run from, like you see me. Rhys is setting up this experience to be cleansing and truthful. We're going to see him trying to be honest and create sex to be their safe space for honesty. Keep in mind that for Feyre and Tamlin, sex revolved around connection and forgetting and trying to move past things. This is now a different setting for Feyre, and we're going to see how she deals with that in a bit.
When Rhys disappears to go get them food, Feyre sits and thinks about Tamlin. And she begins to accept that though she loved Tamlin, quote, "Amarantha had broken us, or broken me so that who he was and what I now was no longer fit." It's not coincidence at all that Feyre accepts this just in time for her to get her sexy on with Rhys. This is SJM setting us up for Feyre to make sure she feels no guilt after this evening's encounter, and so that Feyre can focus on what's important, which is Rhys. Jac, do you think it's believable that Feyre's reached this point of separation from Tamlin?
I think it's Feyre having her separation from Tamlin, but also not really knowing what to do with it. I also want to call out the language from the quote you read. Quote, "Who he was and who I was no longer fit." It's a very sexual way of describing things. This is more than just emotional, but physical. And I'm not saying that Tamlin's penis no longer fits into Feyre. But the way that they built their relationship around sex and the way that sex wasn't healthy, that no longer became the fit for Feyre.
I think it's also how they conveyed intimacy to and for one another no longer fits, because the way Rhys and Feyre express intimacy and develop connection is completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. She now needs intimacy in a different way.
Right. And that's honesty.
Which she does great in this chapter.
I want to take a moment to talk about the food that Rhys brings her. Among the things that he brings her are rabbit stew and wine. Let's not forget that Feyre cried over the first animal she killed, which so happened to be a rabbit. I think the placement of the stew here could be important. It might actually be telling us something about Feyre's growth.
This is such a great call out. We talked before about how we'll see Feyre's acceptance with violence progress as she accepts her emotions for Rhys. So, of course, her meal here would be rabbit stew. An animal that once represented violence for her now fuels her for loving Rhys. I also want to point out that Feyre is finally the one pouring wine. Previously, people keep serving her wine, and now she's in control. Feyre pours herself some wine as well as Rhys, and even keeps refilling, all without even asking him questions. And our baby girl's grown up.
We are so proud of her.
So proud of her for serving alcohol to everyone. Good job.
Without asking.
Okay, am I proud of her?
As the two eat, Feyre asks Rhys what he would have done if she had left with Lucien. Rhys responds, quote, "I found myself deciding that if you took his hand, I would find a way to live with it. It would be your choice. But if he grabbed you, I would have torn the world apart to get you back." Well, it's super hot. Is Rhys honest here, or is he saying what he needs to say to get Feyre hot?
I mean, he's being honest. Like, he will destroy everything if anything happened to Feyre like that. But
it's problematic that I find that hot.
No, it's not problematic, Amy, because that should be the answer. Because we both know it's one of my favorite games to play is like, would you kill for me? And the answer should always be yes. Doesn't mean you're going to go and kill them, but maybe you just play along with the game and just say, yeah, I would kill for you.
If it was in self-defense.
Self-defense, going to go protect you. I'm not saying that someone like, says something about my honor, then you go do something about it. But like if I get kidnapped, go all Liam Neeson on it and like get me back. Oh, what if our audience is too young to know that reference?
Oh, if you don't know what Taken is.
Oh, the movie Taken, please. Oh no. Did we just date ourselves?
We really did.
All right, everyone go watch the movie Taken.
With Liam Neeson.
I honestly can't remember if it was actually good or not, but it was a cultural moment.
It was. Most people can quote it. Our age.
Yeah, I know.
Our age.
When that movie came out, and then I went to study abroad for a semester in the UK, and my mom was panicking, letting me go. And I was like in a group going to Cambridge with these people, and she was just like, I don't trust that woman. She looks like someone who's going to like, put you into that situation. I'm like, she's literally considered the mother of this group. Like she was like this kind 50-year-old woman.
Yeah, she's going to traffic you now.
Yeah, no, Mom.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Feyre and Rhys then have a quid pro quo moment where they start to tell each other about their desire for one another. We've seen this before. They had a similar exchange in chapter 15 before Feyre met the inner circle. And they had something similar also happen when they were training just a couple chapters ago. So I think it's believable that it's happening again here.
I love that it's Feyre who's instigating it, but that is this chapter. Feyre's starting everything here. Feyre asks for food. She pours the wine. She wants the truths from Rhys, and she gets to come. It has to be this way in this chapter for us to believe that Feyre would even make the first move. We need to see Feyre in a take charge mode in order for her to get some action, and that makes sense. And they do make sense, because Feyre just took charge of her life by not going back with Lucien. She just winnowed, she used her shape-shifting power. Feyre is in charge, so of course this will be the moment that she finally makes the move on Rhys. I love that progression, because Rhys was never going to make that first move. It was always going to have to be Feyre.
Yeah, you're right. And it's really fantastic setup on SJM's part.
Oh yeah, like she comes in and she's like, "What's up? Go get me food, bitch. Now drink my wine. Now tell me some truths.
Now pleasure me.
I mean, I totally get it, though. Sometimes you just are in a take charge mood. I walked into a meeting on Thursday and I was like, I'm not here to bullshit. I'm making a decision. Here's the decision. Tell me what you think. Okay, we're done.
Love it.
The meeting was done in 13 minutes.
That was actually really impressive.
Thanks.
I feel like the second they walked in and Feyre saw was a small bed and they were going to share one bed, you know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. It's a trope for a reason.
I've definitely had several, oh no, one bed moments. You know it's going to happen. Yeah. You're not okay, I'm going to sleep with my head towards your feet. We're going to put a pillow between us. It's oh, you're going to cuddle me for warmth. No, she knew exactly what was happening that night.
Mm-hmm. Although all of this has been believable so far, there's one thing that I have a harder time believing, and it's a little reveal from Feyre. She lets the reader know, quote, I'd wanted to see Rhysand during those weeks between visits, and hadn't cared when Tamlin stopped visiting my bedroom. Tamlin had given up on me, but I'd also given up on him, and I was a lying piece of trash for it. We spoke in an earlier episode about Feyre and Tamlin not having sex anymore, and we referred to this moment where she reveals that they stopped having sex. We discussed how that's believable, and I still stand by that. What I have a harder time with is Feyre wanting to see Rhys between the wedding and Feyre getting locked up by Tamlin. I don't know that that was as obvious to me, and I wonder, did SJM forget what she wrote in the earlier part of the book, or is there actually evidence of Feyre wanting to see Rhys?
I have answers to this, and we're going to examine my answers. So think back to the first time that Feyre comes back from the night court. She keeps her clothing, saying that she figured that she's going to need it eventually when she goes back. And Feyre didn't need to do that. Feyre could have trashed them. Rhys was going to give her more clothing anyway. But we also have to remember that she felt like the clothing was freeing and it wasn't a uniform, and she liked those clothes. So the fact that she kept them, to me, is a symbol of wanting to go back. Again, small, subtle, but we'll keep going. When Feyre's back in the spring court and Tamlin ditches her, she spends her time in the library. Not a place that she spent her time in before. She goes there so she can practice reading and shielding just like she did in the night court. Feyre also never fought going back to the night court. What she would fight about was how weak Tamlin was for not having a solution. I think it comes a little out of left field, but it's a sneaky left field and the signs were there. If you think back to one of the moments when Rhys came to get Feyre, she looks at Tamlin and memorizes his face almost as a way of saying goodbye.
Yeah, and we discussed that as kind of like a permanent goodbye, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that same chapter, which is chapter 10 of Mist and Fury, at the very, very end, there is a line that we didn't discuss during that original episode, but I saw a video on TikTok of someone laughing about this line, that Rhys stepped around Tamlin as if he were a piece of furniture. And I bring it up now because who's comparing Tamlin to furniture?
Feyre.
It's Feyre.
Yep.
So Feyre is the one who's like, Tamlin is basically furniture. And that shows to me the separation. That's when it was like, yep, I'm not about this dude anymore.
No. I mean, Feyre, from the beginning, when she was still a human in her little hovel, has always respected strength. And that's what attracted her to Tamlin to begin with, is that he was strong and she thought he was a warrior. And when she stopped having feelings for Tamlin, or as we call it, the beginning of the descent, was when Rhys came to the spring court and discovered her having breakfast and made Tamlin beg on his knees.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fair to say that she did look forward to the times going back to the night court because she respects strength, and Rhys is strength. Let's go back to this whole exchanging of truths. Feyre starts it by asking for a thought, and Rhys goes in hard with his thoughts, telling her, quote, I'm thinking that I look at you and I feel like I'm dying, like I can't breathe. I'm thinking that I want you so badly I can't concentrate half the time I'm around you, and this room is too small for me to properly bed you, especially with the wings. Feyre came in here and said, how about some truths? And then Rhys came in and said, say less. Like I said before, Feyre has always used sex as a way of forgetting. Think of Isaac Hale, think of Tamlin. But Rhys is challenging that by being honest here. And for the most part, Feyre tries to be honest back. But the second when Rhys asks Feyre what she wants and responds with fun, quote, his body tensed against mine, and I wondered if somehow he didn't see it for the lie it was, if he thought that was all indeed I wanted. Well, yes, Feyre, because Rhys isn't used to playing your lying sex games. he set this moment up for honesty, and she brought it down to what she normally does, as using sex as a way to escape. Feyre has now tainted their first sexual moment.
And here we are. And I think everyone's shocked that we continue to now be on Rhys's side and not Feyre's side. Because you're right, he did set it up to be an honest exchange. He gave honesty, and so it's natural then for him to hear what Feyre's saying and believe it to be honest. He believes her lie because he gave her honesty, and she's normally given him honesty back.
When you think about it, later on he talks about like why he doesn't tell her that they're mates. And he was like hoping that maybe after they were together, it would snap into place for her. So think about it this way, right? He finally has Feyre in his arms. He's finally about to really start touching her, right? Like he's just like kind of caressing at this point. And he's thinking, this is it. Feyre's going to realize that we're mates and we're going to be together. And maybe this is the moment I've been waiting for. And then Feyre says, a bit of fun.
Yeah, talk about disappointment.
I mean, he's thinking like, okay, she's being honest. We're being vulnerable. She said that she wouldn't leave me. Oh, a bit of fun.
I would be distraught. Think about every time you've had an expectation be shattered. Or a fantasy and the exact opposite happens. It sucks. So no wonder why he's like, well, she doesn't want me.
I mean, and then the entire time, we don't really go too much into it, but Rhys really like fights to be the one to touch Feyre. He's like, let me have this. Like, I think at one point he's like, just let me touch you. You know, he stutters a little bit. He says that. And he even like fights to say something in the middle of it. He says, Feyre, and then cuts himself off. He is trying so hard to just pleasure her because that's all she's asking. And he's holding back from wanting to say that he loves her. He's holding back from saying that they're mates. And he's holding himself back, not wanting his pleasure to be involved because that would be a betrayal then.
Yeah, it would be a betrayal of himself and what he wants.
Yeah. And a betrayal of like consent, right? Because then it's like, you know, Feyre has all these feelings and attractions for him. And if he does let her sleep with him, then it does start to get messy. So it's like he's just trying so hard just to like get her to realize that he's there.
My heart.
I'm really happy that like within chapters, it's all resolved.
Yeah, seriously, I would have died if this had happened like 200 pages before.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to suffer through.
You and I are assholes as writers. We totally would have done that. We've been like, you know what? Books. You get a book in between.
No, seriously, I would have made this happen in like chapter 12. And then like, y'all would have had to suffer until chapter 55.
We would have ended this book after Rhys gets shot down. And she finds out. Like, we would have just like...
Yeah.
Like, we'd be like, and scene.
Mates? Done. Now you have to wait 18 months for the next book.
So as Feyre and Rhys are intimate, these are all italicized. Trust me, as I read it, I'm like, how do I read this in an italicized voice?
They're all thoughts.
They're all thoughts. Quote, I can't breathe when I look at you. Let me touch you. Because I was jealous and pissed off. She's mine. I shut out the thoughts, the bits and pieces he'd given me. So this is the question that we alluded to earlier, but I bring it here. Are these bits and pieces things that Feyre is blocking out in that moment from her own memory, or is Rhys sending it down the bond to her in that moment? Is she the one thinking about it, or is Rhys?
The first few times I've read this book, I always assumed it was Feyre playing back those things in her head.
Same.
Because that's something I do.
Yeah.
But based on our discussion earlier, and as we were prepping for this episode, I was like, oh, what if Rhys is playing it back in his memory?
Yep. That's why I asked, because it's like when I was doing the final notes, the final read through, and I was going through it, I'm like, wait a minute. None of these are said from Feyre's point of view.
Right. They're all things he said.
Exactly. And then that was the thing that signaled it. Yeah, it was never any thoughts from her. They were things that were verbalized.
Right.
So, of course, I think it could very easily have been Rhys replaying those moments because, like we were just saying, he's holding back, trying to get her to think about the bond and trying not to tell her about the bond.
And on one hand, are these things that she's replaying and, like, trying to piece together? Or are these things he's replaying and being like, shit, I hope it's not obvious?
Or shit, I hope it is obvious. Right? Like, with every moment that he's touching her, I'm sure he's still praying to himself, just please realize that I'm your mate. Yeah. Just please realize this.
Yeah. Let the mating bond snap into place for her.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure he was thinking like, okay, she might want to start this as a distraction, but like maybe by the end, maybe after she comes, she'll realize is that like I'm here and I love her. Oh my God. My heart. It's hurting.
What's sad is that Rhys is having all of this intense emotion and holding back desire and wanting to be with her. But from Feyre's point of view, she views Rhys as a cat playing with its dinner when he plays with the waistband of her shorts. It comes across as him having taken power from her. In doing so, Feyre says a word she almost never says, and that's please.
Rhys has Feyre saying please, but she is 100% in control. Keep in mind that Rhys is pleasuring Feyre before she even kisses him. When Feyre decides that she's done with her neck and ears getting kissed, she turns to him and kisses him first. Again, the badassery of it. They haven't even kissed since Under the Mountain, and he's pleasuring her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a jump, and I like the jump. And again, of course, they weren't going to kiss unless Feyre wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Rhys was never going to do anything. If she wants just a bit of fun, then he will give her just a bit of fun. If she wants to kiss, then he'll kiss. And she was saying that when she turned around and looked at him and he was watching him pleasure her and watching her, I'm just like want to throw my paper and be like, oh my God. Because he's trying to absorb it because he doesn't know if this is the last moment and the only moment he'll have with her.
And that is why Feyre is ultimately in control, is because he's more emotionally invested in this moment than she is.
Yes.
And good for Feyre.
Good for Feyre.
It's funny because it feels like a tug of war for power, because when Feyre orgasms, she cries out, quote, only to have Rhys's lips cover mine, as if he could devour the sound. His eyes held mine as he brought those fingers to his mouth and sucked on them, on the taste of me. I was going to eat him alive. If we think of food as power, and if Feyre's become this food and Rhys is trying to devour her, he's trying to claim that power for himself. What he's doing is he's trying to savor the moment. Mm-hmm. But for Feyre, she's the power, and she has all the power in this moment. And poor little Rhys.
Poor little Rhys. There's two thoughts that you and I were kind of speaking off when we were prepping. Was like the first time we read this, it was like, this is so hot. And then I have gone on a like complete smut book journey that now I'm like, it's pretty vanilla.
It's kind of tame.
What? Like, you mean it was just her that you tasted?
Yeah.
There wasn't other stuff? And Rhys doesn't even tell her that she's a good girl once.
He doesn't. You know why? Because he's not there to patronize her anymore. Tamlin would have called her a good girl.
No. Don't make it so that Tamlin and I are still a better fit. You know who would say good girl? Asriel.
Yeah.
Either any lady or fella he wants to be with, I don't care, just give him someone. He'd be like, you going to be a good girl for me? Are you going to do this? And he'd be like, yes, sir.
When Feyre wakes up in the morning at the start of chapter 49, she is, quote, warm and rested and calm, safe. Unlike any time she ever woke up with Tamlin after a night of sex with him. And in fact, this might be unlike any morning she's ever had.
I was looking at old chapters when Feyre would describe her next morning with Tamlin, and she would say that her clothes were shredded on the floor. It was always pretty violent, and the next day had evidence of that violence. I want to talk about where Rhys is mentally. Feyre and Rhys are wrapped up in his wings, just looking at one another. And when Feyre asks why he made the bargain for her for 1 week a month, he says, quote, because I wanted to make a statement to Amarantha, because I wanted to piss off Tamlin, and I needed to keep you alive in a way that wouldn't be seen as merciful. When Feyre only says, oh, Rhys explains, you know there is nothing I wouldn't do for my people, for my family. And we're back to Rhys's honest lies. It's the truth, yes, and probably makes up the majority of the truth, but let's not deny the fact that he cared for Feyre even then, and he isn't saying that. I think it's because Feyre has set the stage that it's okay to be dishonest, and Rhys is stepping into what Feyre set up.
I think you're right, and I'm going to be Lucian for a moment. It's Feyre's fault.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, she's the one thinking to herself, quote, maybe it'd be easier to pretend like that nothing happened. The alternative might be more than I can endure. And I think this is both of their mindsets. By Feyre dubbing this something for fun and distraction and not something that's truly intimate, and because both of them have feelings for one another, both have to be guarded, and they're guarding themselves with lies.
It's so annoying because, like, when Rhys asked her in the chapter before, what do you want, Feyre? She could have just said you, and that could be interpreted in two different ways. Like,
right.
What do you want? I want you. I want you to, like, do fun things to me. Or it could be the emotional you.
Right, exactly. It's not that hard, Feyre.
Yeah, you can like dip your toe in the emotional vulnerability and not go straight to the lies. Yeah, no, I'm annoyed and I'm hurt, but I don't blame him. Of course that he's going to like be shady and defensive. But like the fact that Feyre wakes up like the alternative is just too hard. It's like, but you gave him the alternative. Her alternative of like what could happen was Rhys's reality.
Right.
She's hurting with a hypothetical. He's hurting with the reality.
Right. But also, this is why we love this book.
Yeah.
It's the angst.
Yeah.
It's that we know they want each other, but they don't know they want each other, or like they don't know the other wants them. And angst. And we're just going to talk about more angst.
Yeah, we are.
Our poor sweet baby boy is tempted all day to tell Feyre about their mating bond. We see throughout the chapter that Feyre notices Rhys wanting to say something to her. She observes, quote, "I could feel the words rising in him, Rhys, as the hours passed. I'd catch him watching me whenever I paused for a break, catch him opening up his mouth and then shutting it. And so it is tragic and angsty and oh so good that Rhys probably wanted to tell Feyre about their mating bond right as he gets shot at. But what is he choosing now to tell Feyre about the mating bond? Why didn't Rhys say something during Starfall? Why, when Feyre just told Rhys she wants some fun, even though we know it's a lie, and Rhys believes her? What is he going to achieve at that point?
My theory, I bet Rhys is imagining that Feyre hates herself over what happened the night before, that she must regret it, that it was a mistake, and that her silence means that she's not interested. I think Rhys is going to tell her so that she wouldn't feel bad. Because Feyre knows that she has feelings for him, but Rhys doesn't know that and doesn't know that she doesn't have regret. It's a whole lot of like, they know, she know, no one knows anything. In fact, any regret that he might feel through the bond is her regretting that he didn't say anything that morning, or her regretting that she's not saying anything then. Feyre wants honesty, but it's only on her own time. And that's a really big character flaw on her part, and it's a fabulous one. It makes her a really well-rounded, good character that SJM built. But this is Feyre's flaw. She only wants to receive and give truths on her time.
It's such an interesting reversal of something that we've always said, that nobody's giving Feyre information, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, to what extent is Feyre unwilling to receive the information? And that becomes her fatal flaw.
Yeah. Wow. Deep. But I mean, like, that's why people love this book so much, I think, is just because of how much louder growth there is.
Mm-hmm.
Because book 1, quiet, subtle growth.
Mm-hmm.
Book 3, we haven't done an analysis on it yet, but that's what we're probably both thinking. And but book 2, it's just very loud growth.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that we can all identify with.
Yeah.
Like we've experienced this in some way, shape, or form ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about when Rhys and Feyre get attacked. Rhys gets hit over and over again with ash arrows, and Feyre's in his arms. She thinks, quote, "I think I was screaming, not for fear as we plummeted, but for him, for the blood and the greenish sheen on those arrows, not just ash, but poison. A dark wind, his power, slammed into me, and then I was being thrown far and wide as he sent me tumbling beyond the arrow's range, tumbling through the air. I slammed into the dense canopy, my body barking in agony as I shattered through the wind and pine and leaf, down and down. I flung out a wave of that hard air that had once shielded me from Tamlin's temper. I stopped falling through the branches." First off, it's adorable. Not adorable. It's
Rhys getting shot down. Super cute.
So cute. Also cute. He uses the last of his power to save Feyre.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Second, all the free-falling Feyre has experienced up until this point has prepared her for this moment. It was all training so that Feyre can catch herself. Feyre couches herself on a net of wind, replicating the metaphor of training that she used just a couple chapters prior.
I bet Feyre wishes that they had, like, other training. You know, like, actual, like, Rhys throwing her off and then trying to catch herself.
Yeah, but we know that Feyre uses her powers best on instinct.
Yeah, but, like, once she started kind of getting, like, a hold of things, you know? Like, I don't know. I feel like if I was Feyre and I knew Rhys was always going to catch me, I think I would test it once. Like, maybe have, like, Azriel right below. Be like, all right, you're going to throw me. Azriel, you're going to catch me. And then you're going to throw me, and then Cassian's going to catch me. Just to, like, you know, like, if you know that you're going to be safe with them and that nothing's going to happen to you, I think that would kind of be fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe. You're a thrill seeker.
A little bit.
If we think on the metaphor of free-falling as symbolic of immortality, which we've done before, Feyre has found purpose and safety in her powers. That's why she's able to save herself. Perhaps more importantly, though, her focus is entirely on Rhys. He's brought her to this point, and Feyre intends to stay with him. I want to go back to something else that we said a few weeks ago. As a heroine, we do not expect Feyre to have an affiliation with darkness. That's something that's usually reserved for the villain. As readers, we've become desensitized to the association with darkness because Rhys is the High Lord of the Night Court, and the Night Court is fighting on the side of good. So it's not a surprise to us when Feyre thinks, quote, "Darkness was my ally. Darkness might shield me, and if I wanted to track him, I'd become a figment of darkness too."
When Feyre goes and becomes darkness, when, quote, "something ancient and frozen and so vicious that it honed my focus into razor sharpness," and Feyre changes her eyes to be like animal eyes, there are two huge things here. One, I initially wrote my notes saying that Feyre's gone back to being the huntress, but I don't think so now. I think Feyre is now the predator. She is the animal that should be feared and hunt. This also means that for the first time, Feyre doesn't compare herself to an animal, despite now having animal eyes and instincts. Feyre's called herself the doe, the wolf, the bloodhound. But now that Feyre is as close to being an animal as she could be, she doesn't give herself that title. Instead, she just owns it. Rather than a woman being compared to an animal, Feyre is the animal, finally.
And just like she's embracing that animal, she's also embracing her darker side. She's become more than just a literal figment of darkness. We see that as she begins to hunt for Rhys. Quote, "And through that merciless, unyielding rage, I decided that if Rhys was not alive, if he was harmed beyond repair, I didn't care who they were and why they'd done it. They were all dead." These aren't just empty words for Feyre. She acts on this when she finds Rhys and kills all of Hybern's men. Quote, "And the blood on my hands felt different from what it had been like under the mountain. This blood I savored. Blood for every drop they'd spilled of his." This is such an intense progression from the Feyre who hated to kill, who felt guilty for her choices under the mountain at the start of Mist and Fury. This Feyre who savors blood, is she believable? Or has her distaste for killing been overridden by the mating bond?
It's what we've been saying and seeing this entire book, that Feyre's comfort with causing death and violence will only grow as her feelings for Rhys grows. So the fact that she's willing to kill shows us that she is finally there with her feelings. She loves Rhys. It's, as they say, the more you stab, the more you love.
What did we say in the first season? The couple who kills together stays together?
Yeah. And adorable. Goals. No, please. No.
That is not the message we're sending in BookTok for BookTok.
Not at all. For legal purposes. And moral.
During episode 9, I spoke about the parallels between the Weaver's Cottage and the search for the Book of Breathings in the Summer Court. I want to suggest that this sequence of Feyre searching for Rhys and just this entire section is also a parallel or even a progression of those two previous moments, which have prepared Feyre for her search. I break this argument up into 3 parts: sex as a distraction, the search for hidden objects, and Feyre's power. Let's start with sex as a distraction. At the Weaver's Cottage, Rhys distracted Feyre by flirting with her and offering Cassian's physical services to help her get over Tamlin. At the Summer Court, Feyre goaded Rhys by suggesting she would sleep with Tarquin to get the Book of Breathings, and both Feyre and Rhys distract Tarquin and Cressida respectively with their attraction, while also conveniently making Feyre and Rhys jealous of each other. Here, in this sequence, Feyre quote-unquote uses Rhys as a distraction. It's fortunate that they do, since that's what helps Feyre locate Rhys in the end. Then the search for hidden objects. At the Weaver's Cottage, as we remember, Feyre had to search for Rhys's mother's ring using her connection to him. At the Summer Court, Feyre had to search for the Book of Breathings using her connection to Tarquin. Here, Feyre has to search for Rhys, hidden from her because of Hybern's magic-blocking chains. It's blocked out their bond. So, instead of relying on her connection to Rhys through the bond, she has to rely on their sexual connection from the night before. Finally, Feyre's power. At the Weaver's Cottage, Feyre used her human instincts and forgot her Fey powers, causing her to panic. At the Summer Court, Feyre used her Fey powers, but was not careful enough and nearly died. Luckily for her, her human heart and empathy for the water wraith earlier in the book ended up saving her and Amren. In this sequence here, Feyre is able to use both her human hunting skills combined with her magnificent power to effectively outrun deadly things in the forest, locate Rhys, and even kill all of Hybern's men.
This is a really powerful writing device that we get. It's called the Rule of Three. You see it a lot in books, you see it in movies, you see it everywhere once you start noticing it. And essentially what it is that you see the same thing happen 3 times over, but the third time it's always different. It kind of has like a punchline to it. I mean, that's if it's funny, or the third time is just more impactful. A really simple way of looking at it is like in a movie, you might see someone try to unlock a door 3 times throughout the entire movie. They go and try to unlock a door, it's locked. And then by the third time, it's unlocked. And you'll see it in different settings, but you'll just be like, there's that third time. So it's SJM doing a good job of it. This does not downplay at all what she did, but it's a great example of the Rule of Three.
So another example of the Rule of Three that I always think about is the Rise of Skywalker. Feyre heals the snake in the desert.
Feyre heals the snake in the desert? What? I was like, wait a minute. You lost me there. Talk about a crossover.
Rey heals the snake in the desert. Then she heals Ben Solo. And then Ben Solo heals her from the dead.
Perfect. That's a great example of the Rule of Three. Once you start noticing it, you'll see it everywhere. And even with like punchlines, if you're listing something off, it's like lions and tigers and bears. That's not a punchline. But like, when people like list things, it's
always in threes.
It's always in threes. The fact that SJM did it this well, this often, and this subtly is why it's a good book, because it's not super obvious.
And it was intentional.
And it was very much intentional. I didn't even notice these threes until you pointed it out here. And it's just very much like
she did it.
This is why she's a good author.
It is. When Feyre finds Rhys, she discovers that there are 7 ash arrows in Rhys's wings. Now, why 7? 7 gets used in a lot of different ways in this series. When I thought about all the different uses of 7, I realized that Cassian and Azriel have 7 siphons. What if Rhys's Illyrian powers are equivalent to Cassian and Azriel's? And if he could have siphons, he would also have 7. In this way, then, are the arrows counters to those hypothetical siphons? Just a random thought. There might not actually be a reason other than SJM likes to use the number 7.
I noticed that number as well, and I do think it's important, as well as the fact that it's related to Cassian and Azriel. Rather than saying that Rhys's Illyrian powers would be equivalent, I think that the 7 arrows to Rhys is meant to be a juxtaposition to show us how weak he is. Rather than 7 siphons to empower him, to make him stronger, it's 7 arrows. It's a mockery of the number of what's meant to show strength is now showing weakness. It's sort of like with Catholicism, you have 3 p.m., which is supposed to be like the time when Jesus was crucified. And then 3 a.m. is when the devil mocks it. That's why in all these like horror movies, like Exorcism of Emily Rose or something like that, you'll notice that 3 a.m. is like a really scary time in movies. That's part of the reason for that. And 7 also makes me think of the 7 shots you got, Amy, last April, those rabies shots. Any listener who does not know that, here's a fun fact about our lovely Amy.
I got bit by a dog and had to get 7 rabies shots.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm very powerful.
Yeah, you are. These are your siphons. The wielder of wild animals. I'm just imagining all these squirrels on you now.
As Feyre removes the arrows from Rhys's wings, she talks about painting everything in her family's cottage before she talks about the dresser she shared with her sisters. Talking about the cottage and how she painted everything is a very clever placement on SJM's part to remind readers of the cottage from Thorns and Roses, and sets up a parallel when Feyre paints Rhys's cabin.
I know we keep harping on SJM this season, but I truly love her. I think that these chapters have been brilliant and amazing, and it's so clever and fantastic. And one day, SJM, I hope you listen to this and you hear that we think you're a talented writer, and please be our friend and just skip the entire first half of this season.
We would be lucky if she got through the first 9 episodes.
I'd be proud for her to listen to season 1.
Less proud for season 2.
I'd be like, season 2, let's see, I'm willing for her to listen from the Hewn City.
Yeah, from Hewn City on. So basically last week.
So what was last week, 10? No, 11? Yeah, we'll just tell her that the first 10 episodes magically got deleted.
and just give her 11 through 15.
I mean, I don't know. We could like go off on 13, 14, and 15.
Yeah, who knows? We haven't gotten there yet. Before we finish this chapter, I could have saved this moment for the breadcrumbs, but it's honestly too good to not talk about here. When Feyre tells Rhys she painted the night sky on her dresser drawer, Rhys stills. Feyre continues and says, quote, I wonder if some part of me knew what was waiting for me. I wonder if, even in my despair and hopelessness, I was never truly alone. I wonder if I was looking for this place, looking for all of you. And Rhys ends with, I was looking for you too.
Oh my God. Like, even in this moment, she's still lying to herself.
Yeah.
Because she said, I was looking for all of you.
Yeah, not him.
Yeah. And like Rhys finally sees it for the lie it is.
Yeah.
And just responds, I was looking for you too. Finally, he sees the lie that she's saying. And then he stills, like the way he is, like he stills when she talks about what she painted. Every time I cry.
I mean, it's giving me goosebumps. Now it always gives me goosebumps. Maybe he's seen Feyre's lies for what they were in the past, and he's not willing to act because she's not being honest with herself. But because he's so depleted here, he's not capable of keeping up the charade. He's only capable of honesty. Because what if that's the last thing he ever said to her?
Oh my God. No, that hurt. I was looking for you too.
Death.
Oh, death. That's us writing it. Yes. If our books ever get published, like, I want our listeners to know we've warned you.
We will cause you harm.
We are cruel mistresses of the word.
Yes, we are.
Of the written word. That needs to be on our business card.
Yeah.
Cruel mistresses of the written word. We enter chapter 50 with Feyre waking up the same way that she woke up the day before, with Rhys, only this time it is a shit show.
Because of Rhys's state, Feyre sets off to hunt the Suriel in order to save him. It's not immediately obvious to us as readers that that's what Feyre's doing, but we get to see a neat little callback to Thorns and Roses and Alice's advice on how to catch a Suriel. Quote, I placed the cloak, mostly new, rich, and lovely, in the center of my snare, and I waited. So then we have Feyre and the Suriel's exchange. At the end of their conversation, Feyre observes that, quote, some primal, lingering human part of me trembled as I took in the snare around its legs, pinning it to the ground. Perhaps this time, the Suriel had let itself be caught and knew how to free itself, had learned it the moment I spared it from the Naga. A test of honor and a favor for the arrow I'd shot to save it last year. Now, Sarah J. Maas tends to do this a lot in her books, and I want to discuss it. I don't know if it's ingenious or lazy. Sorry, Sarah.
After we just went off about how much we love her and that we'll always like, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, maybe it's ingenious.
It just happens a lot.
It happens a lot. So Sarah J. Maas tries to convey the truth of a situation through a character's assumptions. But Feyre, as we know her, tends to project her feelings or thoughts onto others. So is Feyre projecting her beliefs about the Suriel's intentions, or is SJM telling us the truth about the Suriel through Feyre's projection?
When we were talking about this, I asked you to clarify a little bit more, but I think you did a great job saying it here. But it does make me think of in book 1 in Thorns and Roses, she did that a lot with Tamlin. And we called every time saying it wasn't accurate. Not every time, but a lot of times we analyzed it and we're like, no, this is projection because this isn't actually who we discover Tamlin to be. So SJM does this a lot. And in book 1, I'd say 60% of the time she wasn't right.
Yeah.
This time she is right. And that's kind of the beauty with Feyre is like, we don't know if she's right or not.
Right. We've talked a lot about her being an unreliable narrator. And I start to talk myself into circles of, is she actually an unreliable narrator, or is SJM actually using her to be reliable? And we assume she's an unreliable narrator, but maybe it's, I just go in circles with her.
Well, in Thorns and Roses, I think absolutely unreliable narrator.
Right. And I think that's why people love Tamlin so much, because they assume that Feyre's projections are accurate.
Yeah. Thorns and Roses was a beautiful example on SJM's part of a subtle, unreliable narrator. Everyone beloved Tamlin, but when you start looking into it and you start accepting that Feyre is an unreliable narrator, you're like, wow, Tamlin has a lot of issues. The problem, I mean, not the problem, it's a good problem to have, but with Mist and Fury is that Feyre, the more she grows and the more she's coming into herself,
the more discerning she is.
Yeah, the more reliable?
I don't know that I would call her reliable, but I think she's able to peel back layers and see more truth than she was capable of before.
Also, I'll give Feyre a break here. I don't think that it's too crazy to guess that the Suriel let himself get caught just because of how the conversation then goes.
Right. That's fair.
The Suriel is here for the drama, and I am here for the Suriel. The sass. When Feyre asks about how to find the cure for Rhys, she says, quote, "Where do I find the cure?" The Suriel says, "In the forest." "But where is it?" "Here."
Going back to your point, yeah, the Suriel let himself get caught, but he wasn't going to make it easy for her.
No, and I just like to imagine that he's just there for a good time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of like, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. And he's just kind of like playing around, being like, oh, it's here.
Oh,
in the
girlfriend.
Forest. Yeah.
It's fine.
Absolutely. And it's like, where's the cure? What's the cure? In the forest. She's the cure. And that's the funny thing is where it's like, you're looking at him. Or no, but I guess she's not. But he's just there. Like, he's just chilling. He's here for a chit chat.
Yeah. He's there for tea.
Oh, boy, is he? Is it a boy?
I think,
male?
I mean, or non-gender.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if Feyre ever says, like, he, or she just says the Suriel over and over.
She calls it itself. I spared it from the Naga.
And here we are genderizing the Suriel. Shame on us.
Shame on us. They don't have gender.
We're genderizing the Suriel. It's more important the fact that we're genderizing a character that specifically doesn't have a gender. And that is an innate thing we do, and it's not cool.
I want to say in my defense, I used to call the Suriel a female. And then everyone...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I always... In my head, the Suriel was always female.
Interesting.
And then when we started the podcast, I switched to male because you used male.
I'm the problem.
We're both the problem. The Suriel does not have a gender.
The patriarchy is the problem.
So let's talk about this big reveal from the Suriel. So the Suriel mentions Feyre's mate. And this is when we learn that Rhys is Feyre's mate. And, you know, that was a huge moment for everybody. But does the Suriel mention Feyre's mate intentionally? Because the Suriel knows that Feyre doesn't know. In my head, I think, yes. I think the Suriel knew not only that Feyre and Rhysand are mates, the Suriel also admits to knowing Rhysand knows that Feyre and Rhysand are mates. So therefore, the Suriel, having that knowledge, must also be capable of discerning whether Feyre knows.
Yes, like, you make a good point. I don't know.
I think he's just stirring... I said it again.
I know.
I think it is stirring shit up.
They are stirring shit up.
I think they're stirring shit up.
The Suriel seems surprised that Feyre doesn't know, and I don't know what the Suriel gains from that. However, the Suriel also let Feyre think that sticking with the High Lord meant Tamlin, but I think it's fair to say that the Suriel is just a messy bitch.
Yes, they are.
I want to be the Suriel when I grow up. That's my goal. Feyre goes from being worried about her safety to being this close to adding the Suriel to her shit list. She tells them to repeat herself. She demands for clarification. Feyre's so pissed that she puts this like deadly ancient creature on edge, and when she turns around, they've already run away. This chapter originally, you know, when you're reading it, you're like, you know, angst. But now you know it all has a happy ending. I think it's the funniest scene.
It's hilarious because the Suriel, they are just there to start shit.
Yeah. And then Feyre's attitude, I forgot how big and muscular the Suriel was. I have my bows ready to go. Excuse me, mate? No, say it again. Say it again.
Repeat.
Does Rhys know? No. Don't walk away from me. No, get back. Siri, what is it? Say that shit to my face. All right. And then just like the fact that the Suriel's like, no, you're feeling too much. And then just bounces. Goodbye.
As Jac has alluded, Feyre gets upset. And she's upset that Rhys knows that they're mates. Quote, he'd promised not to lie, not to keep things from me. And this most important thing in my immortal existence. We've seen Feyre get upset when people lie to her before. She was upset with Rhys when he lied about his schemes with the Weaver. And she was upset with Amren when Amren lied about the amulet. However, Feyre's been building trust with Rhys and the Inner Circle and has been calling them friends. For Rhys to lie about this and to not be honest destroys some level of trust for Feyre because Rhys has been hiding this thing all along and had plenty of opportunities to reveal the truth once he promised to stop scheming and lying.
I want to point out, Rhys never promised that. He just said duly noted. And now you and I both know, because we talk about that a lot. I would love if I was the serial to be like, I want to point out that the High Lord never promised that.
The High Lord doesn't promise shit.
You said, don't you dare do this again. Don't lie to me. And the High Lord said, duly noted.
Truth. Over the course of this episode, we've seen Feyre use food as power and just all sorts of forms of power in general against Rhys more and more. And that doesn't necessarily stop here, despite Rhys being ill and potentially on his deathbed. Feyre makes Rhys drink her blood forcefully, and though it's for his benefit, there's something very powerful about it. Quote, Rhys blinked again, brows raising, but I didn't give him the chance to object before I gripped the back of his head, lifted my arm to his mouth, and shoved him against my skin. But to do this is not enough for Feyre. It's not enough power. Rhys has always been more powerful than Feyre because knowledge is power, and Rhys has always had the knowledge. Now, for once, Feyre is demanding answers that would make her and Rhys equals, and finally, Rhys complies.
I'm going to be a little sexually explicit here. But this makes me think of violent sex act, more aggressive, let's say. Specifically, if a man is being aggressive with a woman and grabs the back of her head to make her give him a blowjob. That's what this is reminding me of. Feyre is asserting herself. She's aggressive. She's grabbing the back of his head. She's forcing him onto her, and she's making him suck. It's a very sexual, aggressive moment.
It is. It's hot.
After the last chapter, literally anything here is hot.
It's true.
She said the cereal was muscular. I was like, oof, yes.
Daddy Surrey.
Daddy Surrey. We're starting to trend.
This is when things come back to bite Feyre in the ass. And this is why being honest is important. Otherwise, you get angst. Feyre tells Rhys that she deserved to know. Rhys responds, quote, the other night you told me you wanted a distraction. You wanted fun, not a mating bond, and not to someone like me, a mess. Feyre, you promised no secrets, no games. You promised. Something in my chest was caving in on itself. Some part of me I'd thought long gone.
I can't believe I'm doing this again, but I'm going to give this to Rhys. Were there better times to tell Feyre that they're mates? Yes, and we're going to get into that a little bit more down the line. So just give us a couple more minutes. We're almost there, folks.
When Rhys tries to explain, Feyre interrupts, saying, quote, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear you explain how you assumed that you knew best. I don't want to hear you tell me that you decided I was to be kept in the dark while your friends knew, while you all decided what was right for me. It's heartbreaking that the inner circle has gone from being her friends just a few chapters ago to now only being Rhys's friends.
Yeah.
But good for Feyre for standing up for herself.
Yeah. I just had a thought. I can't remember which chapter it was, but Feyre was telling herself that, like, she knew that if for whatever reason Rhys let her wither away, that she could go to Cassian and Azriel and they would take her away and take care of her and then talk to Rhys. Mm-hmm. She had this confidence in these group of people saying, like, I know they would take care of me. And then in this moment to be like, shit, no one took care of me.
It is an ultimate betrayal, and I don't blame her for being mad. I mean, is she overreacting? I don't know. But does she have a right to be mad? Yes, she does.
This is triggering for Feyre because of what happened with Tamlin. Everyone else at the Spring Court knew what was going on with Feyre, knew what was going on behind the scenes, and Feyre was left out. And we're getting that again here with that inner circle.
And that's why it sucks so bad.
Yep.
Rhys tries so hard to calm Feyre down. He even goes as far as saying please, but Feyre ignores him. And it is such a power move. It's the same way Amarantha ignored Tamlin when Tamlin said please, and it's the same way Rhys ignored Tamlin when Tamlin said please. Feyre is taking control. Feyre observes, quote, I saw the pain and sorrow in his eyes, saw it and didn't care, not as that thing in my chest was twisting and breaking, not as my heart ached so viciously that I realized it had somehow been repaired in these last few months, repaired by him, and now it hurt. Before this moment, we've talked about it being Feyre's heart, but Feyre's never acknowledged her heart being that thing, that empty hole in her chest. And I wonder to what extent did Feyre just assume that being remade as a Fae meant she was heartless, that maybe she was no longer allowed to have a heart.
It's interesting that you say that because I feel like in the beginning of this book, we got a lot of talk about her human heart. I feel like this is the moment realizing that there's no difference between the human heart and the Fae heart.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because one, there isn't. Like,
Right.
you know, they're just as emotional, if not more. And I think in that, this is the moment where she's just like, my human heart, my Fae heart, it's just the same thing. These emotions, they suck.
Right. And she died. Her heart stopped. And on some level, I think she just wanted it to remain dead. That was the Feyre we got at the start of Mist and Fury. And what we've seen on this journey is her resistance to having that heart come alive again. And we see that in so many ways, with her refusing to paint, with her thinking of herself as a traitor. And so it is very tragic that she's realizing only now that her heart is breaking again, that, oh, I am alive. I do have feelings, and this fucking sucks.
Maybe if she was a little bit more self-aware. No.
Blaming Feyre again.
What was it? I can't remember the quote exactly, but at the end of Thorns and Roses, when Feyre is on the balcony and sees Rhys, and Rhys says something about your human heart, like, be grateful to your human heart.
Yeah.
He's always celebrated that part of her. And again, heart is a heart, but she never celebrated. And this is what happens when you don't. It sneaks up. You're not actually dead. You're going to have the feelings.
It's going to sneak up and bite you.
Yeah.
So another dagger to the heart moment. At the start of chapter 51, Feyre walks away from Rhys as soon as the two of them arrive at the Illyrian camp. This is after Feyre told Rhys she wouldn't walk away from him just a day before.
You're right. This is exactly what SJM is trying to do. She's saying like, oh, I won't walk away from you. Yes, I will. But like, okay, I put myself in Feyre's shoes and I'm immediately like, well, I mean, did I actually walk away or did I calm myself down a little bit? Like I suddenly get defensive and start like manipulating the conversation to be like, I didn't walk away. More winnowed me.
And see, that's where I'm just like, you didn't communicate and that's on you.
Yeah.
You could have told me, hey, I need a timeout. I'll see you in 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, she told Moore. She knew how to get back to him.
No, she didn't.
Oh, Moore told her I'll be back in 3 days.
Yeah.
But she wasn't like, nah, bitch. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying is like, I know how to manipulate if I need to.
Ladies, please don't act like Feyre in this moment.
No. Definitely not the right thing to do. And fellas.
Feyre does say please to Moore, and Moore does not hesitate to take Feyre away. Now, we've seen male to male.
She kind of hesitates. She hesitates for a second.
She hesitates for a second, but only to observe Feyre's face. And then is like, okay, let's go. She doesn't ask about Rhys.
Not until
afterwards. Yeah.
I'm just saying that, like, I know you and I wouldn't even do that. We wouldn't even hesitate. If I come up to you, be like, take me. Be like, well, all right.
Where are we
going?
What
am I doing?
So up until this moment, we've seen male to male to female, and female to male transactions or attempted transactions with the word please. But I think this is one of the most raw and earnest uses of the word when Feyre says please to Moore. We know Feyre from the beginning of this book has hated the word please, and she's learned to develop trust in the word itself. The moment that Moore listens to Feyre and takes Feyre away is probably the most selfless acceptance of the word please thus far in the series. The fact is that Moore understands the need to get away and trusts that Feyre's making the right decision for herself in that moment when she uses the word please.
Even though Feyre said please to Moore, she is still all attitude when it comes to Moore, and she's pretty short, which again, like, Moore knew about the whole mate thing and didn't tell Feyre, so it's just, I do appreciate that she's not completely nice to Moore. Like, she's pleading, but she's not super welcoming.
Right, she's not groveling.
Or wanting to hear from her.
Moore does tell Feyre that Rhys, quote, wanted to tell you about being mates, and it killed him not to. But I've never seen him so happy as he is when he's with you, and I don't think that has anything to do with you being his mate. Now, on one hand, this must be true because Amren said something very similar to Feyre before Starfall. But does that make Rhys's omission okay? To play devil's advocate, when could Rhys have possibly told Feyre about them being mates?
Let's play this game. I think you and I both agree. Starfall.
I think yes. But then when I think about it, they had just patched up from being mad at each other.
Okay, that's a very good point. Like, Rhys wouldn't want to go in and start up another fight after they just went through it. And I would say, like, he didn't think the emotions were really starting to be there until then. And I mean, this is a great thought exercise. Like, when could Rhys actually have said something to her?
Honestly, he shouldn't have taken her to the bone carver so quickly.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think he should have given her more time to heal. And before he asked her to work for him, I think he should have told her.
No.
I mean, she would have run away again, right?
No, I think that would have been cruel. She was going through an intense breakup. She's going through all these things and her emotions with Tamlin. Like, you can't do it while she's still struggling with Tamlin.
It's so messy.
It is messy. I mean, but this is great because, like, you know, we have to ask this because genuinely, Feyre, when was he supposed to tell you? Not when you're getting over Tamlin. That would have been a very wrong thing to, like, throw his hat into the mix.
Yeah.
She was still, like, trying to, like, figure out how to eat and not throw up all the time.
Right.
Let's pretend to have this conversation, right, where Rhys. I mean, he probably would have done the story thing, right? Like, still done the same thing. Like, once upon a time, in a Prithian far, far away, there lived a High Lord who started having weird dreams about hands.
It could have just been a casual evening at dinner, just the two of them, and been like, you know that time you asked me to not lie to you? Well, I've been keeping something from you, and I feel like it's time to come clean.
Yeah, but then how do you say that? Because, like, I wouldn't even want to, I don't even think it's like, I've been keeping something from you. It's like, look, like, I need to tell you something. There genuinely has not been a right time. And you're going to get mad saying that it hasn't been the right time. But, like, I feel like for me, it's hard to tell you this. This is how I would manipulate. Look, I need to tell you something. You're going to be angry. And I want you to know that it hurts me to have to tell you this, knowing you're going to have a negative reaction.
You're already blaming her.
I didn't say I'm not. You say you're a morally gray character. I got the subtle grays over here. It's the, like, you know, setting it up where it's like, I know that we're going to have a conversation and it's going to be hard and you're going to be angry, but just know that, like, it's not easy for me too. And that's a fair thing.
That is a fair thing. And to go one step further, it's, you're going to be angry, and I want you to know you're allowed to be angry.
Yeah, you're allowed to be angry. But then, like, how do you say, like, look, we're mates?
I don't know if it snapped into place for you, but it snapped into place for me.
Would you like to go on a date? Are you free next Sunday? I mean, technically, I'm your boss, so I can make it happen.
But, you know, like, if this is going to be a conflict of interest, I can stop paying you.
If you could work for me for free. I mean, like, she lived in his house.
I know.
How is he supposed to tell her that? Like, look, I need you to move out, and then I'm going to tell you something interesting.
Or like, hey, you know how you already saw my schlong? Let's keep this interesting.
Hey, remember the time where you couldn't stop looking at it?
There's a reason.
There's a reason. Okay, realistically, the best time to tell her probably would have been at the inn had Feyre not said that it was about fun.
Right. No, absolutely. The other time, because everything was already messed up anyway, he should have said something the moment he realized. Like, not as she was dying, but on the balcony before they separated under the mountain.
I don't think that it's a should have thing. I think
he could have.
He could have. I don't think that, like, morally, I think it's morally good that he didn't tell her. Because, I mean, but is that a morally good thing? Should she go into an engagement knowing that there's a mate out there for her? What's the more moral thing to do? I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh,
it's messy.
no.
And that's why this is so great.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no clear time where it was like, that was the better moment.
But I don't think Feyre ever gives him the benefit of the doubt of that, of like, yeah, no, this is like a hell of an information. All she says is, you should have told me, which, like, is not wrong. But she never took a moment to really appreciate, like, there was no time to tell her.
Right.
Wow. I don't know. It's like these tropes. It's like the trope that, like, you should have told me. It's like, okay, but can you say when?
Yeah.
Please?
Let's please replay the past 2 months and you tell me when I should have done it.
Yeah. Point out for me, Feyre. Please point out for me.
And thus ends part 2, House of Wind. And what a fabulous place for it to end, because Feyre will no longer have the same association or relationship with the Night Court from here on out.
Let's go into some breadcrumbs and spoiler into the breadcrumbs for the SJM universe, everything. So, like, you know, like, if you don't know what we're talking about, then don't listen to it. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Chapter 45, quote, I felt it then, how easy it would be to jump between them, join them together. My powers, each one of my animals halted midair and frozen into perfectly carved bits of ice. One by one, they dropped to the earth and shattered. They were one. They had come from the same dark origin, the same eternal well of power. Once, long ago, before language was invented and the world was anew. Foreshadowing Feyre's powers for the Battle of Velaris, but also potentially teaching us that there might be a multiverse?
Or just how power came to be in the multiverse? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes from that same origin. I think there's a lot more of that in Silver Flames.
Yeah, I think so too. In chapter 46, the Inner Circle has a conversation about the females in the Illyrian camp. No born fighters in this lot? 3 actually, Moore said. They've got the instinct, the claws. It's their stupid families that want them clipped and breeding. I think Emery might be one of those.
If she was allowed to even sort of fight, yeah. I mean, like, definitely spunky.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Chapter 47. Someone tipped us off you'd been out here. We need to get out of here. He hasn't been himself. Tamlin hasn't been himself because he's been playing beer pong with his best buddy, King of Hybern. I don't know where that, but I have that visual now.
No, I do too. Also in chapter 47, Lucien says to Feyre, quote, "What did he do to you? Did he take your mind?" And this is perfect setup for Feyre's final move at the end of the novel, checkmate.
And then Feyre to Lucien, quote, "Tell Tamlin, I will hunt each and every one of you down, and I will demonstrate exactly what the darkness taught me." The darkness taught her how to infiltrate and destroy from the inside.
Because she's a badass High Lady of the Night Court.
Yeah.
In chapter 48, Rhys tells Feyre, and I know we all love this moment, quote, "And when I lick you, I want you splayed out on a table like my own personal feast."
That's a breadcrumb that
needs no explanation.
And it comes into fruition real fast.
Yeah.
Chapter 49, it was not hot anger that poured through me, but something ancient and frozen and so vicious that it honed my focus into razor sharpness. So Amy and I were kind of throwing some things around here, and Amy suggested mating bond, but I feel like it could also be the cauldron or the mother.
I see what you're saying. And the reason why I think it's the mating bond between them pushing her in this way is because we see how crazy the males get because of the mating bond when their females get looked at by other males. And the mating bond is this ancient thing inside them. So I just thought it was the mating bond.
The reason why I say cauldron or mother is because when they reference ancient, like the mating bond, they don't talk about it as being ancient. They talk about it as being rare and everything. They usually reserve the word ancient when they talk about the mother or cauldron. I think it's multiverse again.
And last but not least, in chapter 49, Feyre tells Rhys, quote, "I think she, Nesta, and Amren would be fast friends. I think she would like Valaris despite herself. And I think Elaine would like it too. Though she'd probably cling to Azriel to have some peace and quiet." And Feyre, the fortune teller, strikes again.
I know. Feyre, can you tell me something about my life, please? All right, let's go back to the question we asked at the beginning of this episode.
If you can remember it.
I know, right? I don't even want to look at my watch. Who is more ready for this relationship, Feyre or Rhys? Amy?
So you said Rhys earlier in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think emotionally, Rhys is more open to this relationship starting. Like, he is very eager. He's been eager from day one for Feyre and him to, like, finally solidify their mate status, right? However, he has been keeping information from her this entire time. And though he's been doing the work to grow, to become the male he needs to be for Feyre to accept him, he could never be that male until the mate stuff came out. When was he going to reveal that? It was the Suriel that had to do it. So I don't know that he was ready for the relationship. The Suriel had to push them over the edge. Both of them. Like, hey, guys.
All right. So this isn't me blaming Feyre again, but this is like, we're doing this like actual conversation. I'm not like actually like trying to victim blame Feyre here, but okay, the reason why I say Rhys is ready for the relationship is because Feyre's been doing her own work, right? She's been healing. Rhys has been doing a lot of character development in his own work as well. They got to the point of being able to be honest. The inn was the moment to tell her that they were mates. He was ready. And you're right. They could not be together until that stuff had come out, and Rhys should have been the one to say that. But Feyre should have also been the one, like they were equal, right? Like they were the same place to have this conversation, and she derailed it. So he was ready to confess. He was ready to be there, but she's not ready to have that moment yet.
Yeah.
And because he was ready to have that harder conversation about the whole mate thing, that makes him a little bit above her in that ready factor. She's the one who brought it back down to fun.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. She's the one who derailed the conversation, that she just wants to have fun and distraction. And he could have used that moment to have been like, you know what? I understand that. I respect that, but I can't give that to you. And here's why. Because for me, it means more. Instead, he was like, you know what? I'm going to take whatever I can get. And that's a little selfish.
Okay. Devil's advocate. So in that situation, Feyre is saying like, I'm here for fun. If he did let her know about this whole mating thing, then he'd be pushing his own agenda. By her saying, I'm here for fun, it's her saying, I'm still not healed. I'm still not ready. There's clearly a path of emotion that's been laid out. There's that groundwork. But by her saying, like, I'm here for fun, it's her saying, I'm not here for emotions. I'm here for this. And by letting her know about the mating bond, granted, he should, but it's not respecting where she's at emotionally.
Okay, triple devil's advocate. He doesn't have to tell her about the mating bond. He shouldn't have gone with her fun. He should have been like, I respect you want to have fun. I wish I could give that to you. I'm not at a place where I can just give you fun. I want more. He doesn't have to tell her about the mating bond at that point, but he shouldn't have gone off the rails with her.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting the scraps that she's willing to throw at him. And at this point, he's not asking for more.
Because he doesn't believe he's deserving of more.
Exactly. If he was going in with those scraps and is going to say like, hey, I'll take whatever you can get, but like, hopefully this will make you love me, then yeah, that's manipulation too. Look, all this to say is that there's no answer. It's like, I mean, I think you and I both agree that it's just all around like, well, fuck.
Yeah, it's angst.
It's angst. I mean, that's the thing. And that's the thing with angst is like, you can argue all day long.
And it's not going to be a better situation.
Because it's just angsty.
Yeah.
That's the beauty with things. There's no answer.
That's why we love this book.
That's why we love this book, this scene. Like, I know you and we could just do this
all day.
All day. But this episode's already really long.
And so we will end this episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 52 through 55 of A Court in Mist and Fury.
And we say that with a smile.
Very large smile.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and to learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Or find us on TikTok and Instagram at the handle BookTalkForBookTalk.
Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices
down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per detail.